Character select.
I remember in December of 2019 and January of 2020, many people were talking about the idea of bringing back emo culture by making 2020 the RAWRing 20s. But thanks to tho-who-shall-not-be-named, we didn't get the chance to show this generation what being emo was about, as we were all stuck in quarantine losing our minds. And sure, almost nothing has changed, but that doesn't mean we should just give up. We have even more time to assess the internet, and that's where most trends often come from these days, so maybe we could use it to our advantage. But if you're someone who was born after the new millennium started, you might not even have the slightest clue of what I'm talking about. Well, you're in luck, because I myself was an emo back then, and am still extremely alternative. So, let me tell you what emo is to begin with. Emo is short for emotional, and even though its most popular era was the 2000s, it actually started in the mid-80s around the same time as the gothic subculture did. Just like the goth scene, emo came from the music of the time, starting as a post-hardcore subgenre. But as time went on, it formed into something much more, especially during the 2000s. The appearance became more defined as even the mainstream began to acknowledge it, which is why we had so many alternative characters in fictional media from that time period. But during the 2010s, much like all great things that came before, it started to die out in popularity and was replaced by hipsters. And you know the old saying, you don't know what you've got until it's gone. So many people, like myself, have been trying to bring all forms of alternative back, so we can have more people to share our love with, and to have more than just fond memories to be nostalgic about, as we're busy making entirely new ones. But since things have changed so much since the 2000s, we'd still have things to remember. Since the potential modern emo may be way different from what we remember as the technology and internet has grown so much in the past 2 decades, it's worth sharing what we had then to give you an idea of what a modern rendition could be like. So, here are just some aspects of what emo culture was like in the 2000s. There were a lot of mascots for websites, comics, and clothing back in the late 90s and early 2000s. Anyone remember that crude rabbit called Happy Bunny? In 2001, an artist and writer named Jim Benton created this little character with such famous quotes as,
"Hey, you made me throw up a little. It's cute how stupid you are. Your anger makes me happy.
and
Would you like to suck on a mint, since you already suck all the time?"
Happy Bunny was the first Twitter user. But instead of trying to ruin everyone's lives over 5-year-old tweets, they just hated everyone and everything. But the topic of this section isn't for this cute and rude bunny. If anything, these two are the exact opposite. Pawn and Z. Created by Jeff Thomas, a series of single-panel comics about love and how these two share it. Pawn is the yellow character, and Z is the blue character. They were designed not to resemble any specific gender, so anyone could relate to them. Despite the designs, these comics were more positive and heartwarming, even if it walked into strange territories. Looking through the official website, you can not only see how much the art style has grown, but how twisted it was back then. You made my heart too happy, so I vomited blood. Oh look, it's beating for you. Even if you were horribly disfigured in a freak accident and looked like this, I'd still love you. Some were less about love and more about horrific comedy. Are you okay, dude? The sword comes out after you swallow it, right? Be happy, okay? I killed it for you. And you could easily tell why emo culture was attracted to these characters. I made you a cookie, but I eated it. But more recent installments left behind the twisted aspects and are just plain cute. With every passing minute, I only love you more, never less. The most breathtaking part of the view up here is you. With you, it feels like everything else fades away and disappears. Even though it's not as edgy and more wholesome than anything else, these characters are still important to people. Personally, I prefer the older, cruder comics as I love the dirtier art style and random gore. But I can see how people would like the newer ones as well. The sixth generation of gaming introduced some of the most charming, experimental, and outright crude video game icons. Ratchet and Clank, Jak and Daxter, Sly Cooper, God of War, Devil May Cry, Halo, Destroy All Humans, Voodoo Vince, but while all of those franchises stick out between each other, I'd say none of them could match this franchise in weirdness and experimentation. Kingdom Hearts. In 2002, Square Enix released an action RPG that crossed over the world of Final Fantasy and Disney animation. It was a crossover on paper that made no sense. Final Fantasy, a Japanese RPG video game franchise, while Disney films were American animation. In almost all regards, they're polar opposites. But look at both Final Fantasy VII and Hercules. Products that released the same year of 1997, and yet it still happened. And not only this, but it has also become one of the biggest video game franchises that's still alive to this day. So, what did Kingdom Hearts have to do with the emo scene? Well, at first, nothing. That is until Kingdom Hearts 2 came out in 2006. The series went from being mysterious, whimsical, and Disney-like to more action-y, melancholic, and Final Fantasy-like. Just look at the designs of Sora from both games, and you'll see what I mean. The beginning of the game is about this boy named Roxas in one of his last days of summer vacation. He keeps having dreams about Sora, not knowing who he is, as weird things begin to happen. He keeps having dreams about Sora, not knowing who he is, as weird things begin to happen in his small home of Twilight Town. We see more of the story as teenagers scream light and darkness at each other as they're all wearing black cloaks. Speaking of which, Organization, Axel and Roxas' story, the dramatic moments and over-the-top action seem like it was aimed towards a specific group of people, and they nailed it. People were making fan art, drawing themselves as Keyblade Masters, buying Organization 13 cloaks, and going to a parking lot to reenact their own Kingdom Hearts story. You know what I'm talking about.
Don't hit the camera, man.
Dual wield!
And trust me, I was not immune to it either. Hey guys, I know there was an entire screen at the beginning of the video explaining why there was a guest narrator, but I feel as if this memory was just a little too personal. So, here I go. I made an almost 2-hour-long web series of my own Organization 13 web series called Life and Organization 13 that you can now watch as a single upload through the JetRay archive on Cackling Pumpkins Originals. Oh, and be sure to prepare yourself though, because there's a lot of cringe in that series. Okay, bye, back to the other guy.
That tastes like grandma shit!
Other times, people just like having the characters interact with one another in other ways. From cute little videos, like the Demix Time series, to full-on ships. When it wasn't Roxas and Axel in these ships, it was Riku, the biggest, sad, lonely boy in the series. And believe it or not, this will not be the last you'll see Riku on this list. One of the earliest forms of content on YouTube was AMVs, short for animated music videos. These videos would feature clips from a TV show, movie, anime, or video game, either focusing on the best moments or a certain character. Most of which I've seen have used alternative music popular from that time period. Linkin Park, Evanescence, 3 Days Grace, etc. Or just some lyrical music from Kingdom Hearts and Sonic the Hedgehog. Some would use artwork, as it wasn't common knowledge on how to retrieve clips from copyrighted material. Yet. Nor was it as easy. Most of the artwork in these videos, especially from the olden days, were basically used without the permission of the artist. Some of the art is either so old that it's either hard to find or even outright deleted from its respective source, as these videos may hold the only proof of its existence. AMVs are still made to this day, with higher quality, more effects, editing, and a lot seem to use non-copyrighted music or music that they could get the permissions to use. A lot of the original AMVs are still online. In fact, while looking into examples for this video, I just looked up Shadow the Hedgehog AMV, and the results jumped from 1 year ago to over a decade ago. This is something I rarely see on YouTube. I guess some things never truly die then. Newgrounds is an amazing website. It's the perfect home for animators, musicians, voice actors, game developers, artists, and those who just want to see amazing content. I'm glad more people are starting to recognize how great this site is. It truly feels like after YouTube's multiple adpocalypse raids and Tumblr's flagging raids that many are realizing that they were missing something great and join the site. It's like Cartoon Network's Renaissance era, but epic. The site was extremely popular within the early 2000s and was the birthplace for some of the era's most well-known characters and series that are still going on to this day. Salad Fingers, Foamy the Squirrel, Ed's World, Madness, Pico, etc. This is where many introverts and creatives went back then, and still do. Though many people used it as an opportunity to make fun of or let out their frustration of current trends and celebrities. Get Mr. T to kill Pokemon. Nail Jesus to the cross. Shoot Judge Judy and watch her get run over as a cult member with red eyes gives you a medal for your crimes. Many people would say that these were unhealthy and only caused more problems. But honestly, virtually shooting a trend in an exaggerated way through Flash, I think was more healthy than making a 1-hour think piece about how this cartoon creator was garbage. As brain-dead viewers who are incapable of forming their own opinion would use those videos as an excuse to attack others and send them death threats. With these games, that's all there was. Just shooting something in the virtual realm. That's it. It rarely ever went further than that. No one played Judge Judy 1 and thought they had to send her death threats after that. If anything, much like violent video games, these Flash titles, while questionable, were far more of a healthy outlet. But in the end, it didn't matter if you were telling Paris Hilton to go away or obsessing over salad fingers. Most alternative people from the 2000s have fond memories of Newgrounds, and a lot of us are still making them. Join Newgrounds, and if you have the extra money to spare, become a supporter, and help Tom Fulp. He's a handsome man. Play Friday Night Funkin' and watch Monster Lab.
But Newgrounds is mean!
Shut up and stay on Twitter.
Ow! Who threw that? I'm gonna get approved now!
This girl. This cross-leaning, dirty, blonde, plaid skirt, chain spike-wearing, cross-eating, anime goth girl is basically the unintentional icon of an entire generation and subculture. And no matter how hard I look, she doesn't even seem to have a name. Not that I can find, anyway. This piece was drawn by the artist Hiro Suzuhira, most known for his work on visual novels and the fighting game Phantom Breaker. Though most of the visual novels I can find info for are adult games. So please keep that in mind. But while some of you may remember this girl, I'm sure that most of you are having doubts about her impact. How could a single drawing that's well over a decade old at this point be as memorable as it is? This is just wishful thinking, right? Well, remember how I told you that in the beginning of 2020, people were trying to bring back the emo scene with the RAWRing 20s? Well, during January of that year, many online artists were reminded of this girl and decided to redraw her. Dozens, if not hundreds of artists decided to make their own rendition of this girl. Even Hiro Suzuhira jumped on the trend himself and remade the original drawing as a thank you to the fan art he had received. But why this girl? What was so special about her that she had become an unintentional icon, like Pon and Z and Happy Bunny? My theory? She's what many people, especially young girls, wanted to look like. But because either their parents held them back or they were afraid of getting bullied, they just never did. And the ones that could most likely didn't have the money to replicate her look. Gothic attire and alternative accessories in general are way too expensive. Even a single outfit like this could be costly. So the most people could do was wear black skinny jeans, a band tee, a spiked collar, silly bands on one wrist, and a rubber wristband with the word hugs on the other. Could we achieve it now? There are more sources to buy harder to find clothing thanks to the internet, but the prices are still a killer. If being emo or goth is just a phase, then tell me, why do we put so much money into it just to leave it behind? We need to get our money's worth, you know? Whenever I hear people complain about how there are only 5 websites, I get a little frustrated. There are other sites out there. You either just don't know about them or care too much about the others or statistics to even give them a chance. YouTube may have the biggest audience because they also have an obscene amount of content creators. So, while there are more people to see your content, there's also more creators uploading content as well. Take Newgrounds, for example. It doesn't even come close to the same user base as YouTube has, but Murda's Playlist have gotten far more views than the YouTube uploads have garnished. This is because Newgrounds focuses on a certain community, being the animation community, rather than just being vaguely about content. I've also heard people say that they'd go to these other sites if they had a monetization system like YouTube. Sure, everyone needs a job and money to get by, but why rely on such an inconsistent system that constantly changes and can get stripped away from you just because you said a naughty, mean word in just the first 60 seconds of your video? There are other systems you can use, like Patreon, Ko-fi, TeePublic, Teespring, Shark Robot, PayPal commissions, Streamlab donations, Etsy, partnership programs, and if you want to fund certain projects, there's Kickstarter and Indiegogo. YouTube is not the only option you have. And just because it has the biggest numbers doesn't mean it's the best option. Maybe if we actually supported other websites, they could get what they need to support us as YouTube loses a lot of its numbers. These websites won't change unless we give them a reason to. Sorry about that long rant. It was meant to be a much shorter segue into talking about a now neglected website that's a shadow of its former self. MySpace. MySpace was a popular social media site that first launched in 2002. It was pretty much the social media site at that time. Between the years of 2005 to 2008, it was the largest social media website on the internet. That is, until Facebook took over. One thing that separated MySpace from other sites at the time was the impressive amount of profile customization that you just don't get anymore. You can change your text color, size, font, border colors, background image, and even choose music that can automatically play when you enter someone's profile. Even though it was either annoying or almost jump scare material, depending on what was playing. YouTube in its early days had almost the same level of customization. It was a good way to encourage people to be creative and let others learn about the type of person you were with no words and just by using a single background image and color choices. But now, neither MySpace or YouTube allows this amount of customization. As for why, I don't know. You'd think that as websites would grow, they would build upon this customization rather than strip it down to,
Ooh, white background, maybe a custom banner, default text, and ooh, look, you can change the order of your playlist. Wee!
sure. A lot of what people made weren't the most appealing, but that's not a good reason to limit everyone else. That's like saying the animation industry is now canceled because the Emoji Movie exists. If MySpace brought back this customization, I feel as if that alone would be enough to get some people interested again. Heck, if any website allowed that level of personality, I know I'd give it a shot. But as of now, it's just a site that in 2016 had the information of over 360 million users leaked to a website on the dark web. No, I am not joking. Characters are important. They're an instant eye-catcher for anything, whether that be for TV shows, video games, cartoons, movies, and even just products. A good character can not only stand on their own, but also help sell the product. I myself got into League of Legends, thanks to the character design of champions like Jinx, Katarina, and Ahri. Many people who play Smash will get excited when their favorite gets in, and sometimes a character will just float around the internet on their own. This big titty anime girl named Uzaki got more popular than her own show thanks to Twitter users being reminded that boobs exist. There are many characters that the emo scene sort of adopted into their community, for mainly being the quiet, sad, lonely emo boy. Shadow the Hedgehog, Riku, Raven, L, the Advent Children version of Cloud, and, of course, Sasuke from Naruto. My god. He was probably brought up the most, for boys loving his badass abilities and girls shipping the hell out of him either with themselves or other characters in the show, like Naruto. I'm sure some people remember the 2005 Flash cartoon Sasuke Confess?
From that day, I just can't stop thinking about you. And I will have you no matter what.
These characters all have a few things in common. 1, they're constantly brooding. 2, they're powerful and badass. 3, got some kind of rival, whether that be the protagonist or, in the rare occasion they were the main character of their story, the villain. 4, dress in dark colors. 5, long, stylized hair. And 6, they always hook up with someone by the end of the show. Did the community really need these characters to begin with? Maybe, maybe not. But to many people, these characters are important to them. either because they relate or look up to them. Even if you don't like these characters, I think it's still important to acknowledge that they were loved to begin with, especially emo kids during the 2000s. I have been talking about characters a lot in this list, and how can I? Fictional media is important to a lot of people, and 99% it's because of the characters that star in said content. But who is the most important to this scene to the point where they're not only worthy enough to get their own spot, but also the highest out of all the characters here? Well, let me ask you this. Who is as cute as the Goth Angel, as loving as Pawn and Z, and can sometimes be as edgy as Riku, Shadow, or Sasuke when they want to be, but also still a byproduct of the era itself with random humor and screaming? What other character would invade this spot? Grr. Is anyone really surprised? Well, if you are, then you're dumb and you should feel bad. Grr is a character from Nickelodeon's Invader Zim, created by Johann Vasquez and premiered in 2001. The series is about an alien named Zim who believes that he's being sent to Earth to prepare it for an upcoming invasion from the Urkin Empire, when, in actuality, his leaders, the almighty tallest, hate him and just wanted to get rid of Zim, mainly because he ruined their first invasion attempt. All invaders are given sirs, small robots that are meant to act as servants to their respective invaders. To make sure that he didn't destroy anything on his way out, the tallest gave Zim a defective model they filled with garbage and called him Grr, hence the G. Because of this, Grr is completely insane. Though, he is capable of causing destruction if he really wants to, but his mind is more on things like, tacos, suck monkeys, poop products, and becoming a giant pizza. Grr was everywhere on the internet, and is still seen as an emo icon. That's not the phrase I thought I'd ever say, but, jackets, stuffed animals, phone cases, statues, backpacks, and anything else that was available at Hot Topic at the time. And he still is relevant thanks to both the 2019 Invader Zim special Enter the Florpus and 2020's Nickelodeon's Kart Racers 2 Grand Prix. Even if 2020 couldn't be the start of the Roaring 20s, Grr will always be here with us.
Yes, sir! Doody, 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 doody.
Of course, I have to bring it up. It's what made this scene to begin with, the music. It's worth noting that not all the bands that were associated as emo in the 2000s were specifically emo themselves. They were merely lumped together due to their sound, tones, and themes. Linkin Park, Evanescence, 3 Days Grace, Paramore, My Chemical Romance, Blink-182, Green Day, Fall Out Boy, Avril Lavigne, Mayday Parade, etc. Not all of them could be classified as emo themselves, so don't leave that angry comment just yet. In fact, some were more classified as punk, rock, or alternative in general. To some of you, that's all you needed to be. Alternative. Yeah, not everyone would agree, but that doesn't mean we can't listen to them. Being either goth, emo, or punk doesn't mean you have to listen to only that type of music. Take me as an example. I listen to all things alternative, plus jazz, piano music, chill hop, movie and game soundtracks, electronic dance music, and a little bit of country. Yeehaw. Linkin Park is probably brought up the most as either something people look back on or used for memes to dunk on emo people. I love Linkin Park. In the End, What I've Done, Glass Castle, Paper Cut, New Divide, Breaking the Habit, Crawling, Somewhere I Belong, Faint, Burn It Down, One More Light, and the first Linkin Park song I listened to that's also my favorite from them, Numb. The music videos that went with a lot of this kind of music were either surreal or relatable, but most were visually interesting. Welcome to the Black Parade and Helena by My Chemical Romance were good examples of this. At one point, I was going to make a top 5 Linkin Park music videos, but I realized while planning the video that it would have been just an excuse to gush about the Breaking the Habit music video and its beautiful animation, detailed art style, and dystopian backgrounds. A fun fact, the backgrounds from the Breaking the Habit music video, Evanescence's Bring Me Back to Life music video, and the stages from Kakuto's Shojin, Back Alley Brutal on Xbox, inspired the aesthetic of Gothindel, the setting of the webcomic Alice Darksin, which also takes a lot of inspiration from early 2000s media, the emo scene, and so much more. But now you're probably wondering, why is the music the most important part of the scene, and the whole reason it exists only number 2? Well, there is one place where you could find nearly everything that I just talked about. A place that's not quite what it used to be, but still is fond to a lot of people's hearts. A place in almost any mall you can find. That place is Hot Topic. A store that used to scare kids and excite anyone alternative until they saw the high prices. But still, it was one of the few places that sold spikes, chains, anime t-shirts, and Kingdom Hearts material, while the bands I listed before were playing on the speakers, as Gur was everywhere. Not only this, but it stuck out from everything else with its fenced walls and a literal gate entrance, and a logo that looked like a beast had ripped into it. Though, due to alternative scenes in general, whether that be emo or goth, suffering a decline in popularity as hipsters were taking over the 2010s, would be known as the quirky, wholesome generation. Sorry, I just threw up a little bit after being reminded of wholesomeness. Ew. Let's leave that behind, huh? Yeah? Okay. Now, the store is filled with Minecraft, Steven Universe, Marvel, and any popular piece of pop culture. While it made sense why things like Bendy and Five Nights at Freddy's have made a home in the franchise, as I could see a lot of alternative people being into those things, if they had existed then. It was obvious that the brand had changed. The stores lost their identity, and even the sign changed as well. But since a lot of people are trying to bring alternative content back, and how many people miss the olden days of Hot Topic, I could see the brand experimenting with the idea of turning some already established stores into classic versions, or even open a completely separate chain called Hot Topic 2000, or Hot Topic Classic. Maybe to see if the older version can survive on its own in this day and age. It's worth trying at least. I know I'd check it out.